Good afternoon. Welcome back. These are your notes for solving equations by taking square roots. You need to remember to always write your answer in simplest form. So if you have a square root that can be simplified, you need to remember to always do that. Okay. So example number 1 is 4x squared minus 5 equals 2. Okay, we're basically just problem solving, except for now we're going to have to use square roots. Okay, so to solve this, I would add 5 to both sides. So I have 4x squared equals 7. And then I want to divide by 4. So I have x squared equals 7/4. And then to undo a square, I use the square root. And I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So I have x equals positive and negative, and I can't take the square root of 7, so it's radical 7 over 2. The square root of 4 is 2. Okay. Example number 2 is 3x squared plus 6 equals 33. Okay, and I think, actually, let me grab another colored pen here. I'm going to show you my changes in a different color. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is subtract 6 from both sides of the equation. So I have 3x squared equals 27. Next thing I need to do is divide both sides by 3. So I have x squared equals 9. Okay, and my last step would be to take the square root of both sides. So x equals positive or negative 3. Okay, remember, when you have to take the square root of something, there are two square roots. There's the positive and negative. So please remember to put that plus or minus in front. Example 3 is 5x squared minus 9 equals 0. So we want to add 9 to both sides first. So I have 5x squared equals 9. Okay, I'm going to divide both sides by 5. So I have x squared equals 9/5. And now we need to take the square root of both sides. Okay, so I have x equals, not that little negative spot right there. The square root of 9 is positive or negative 3. And the square root of 5 is radical 5. We have a small problem here, though. This radical in the negative is a big no-no. Cannot have a radical in the denominator. Okay, so we know when we're working with equations, if I multiply by 1, I haven't changed anything. To cancel this out, what you do is you multiply by, let me switch colors, times radical 5 over radical 5. Now, you can take my word for it that, well, let's go with the top first, sorry. So x equals positive or negative 3 radical 5. Okay, when we multiply a number and a radical, it just becomes them times each other. Now, you can take my word for it that when you multiply a radical by itself, the radical sign cancels out and it just becomes that number. So it is 5. Or, when you multiply two radicals, you can actually multiply the numbers that are underneath the radical. So that becomes the square root of 25, and the square root of 25 is 5. Okay, so that's that. Number 4 is 4 times x plus 10 squared equals 24. Now, I know a lot of you say, oh, let's distribute that 4 first. Or let's, do the square. Okay, that's just going to make things more complicated, and we are trying to make this as simple as possible to get that x by itself. So the first thing we're going to do is get rid of that 4 by dividing both sides by it. So on the left, I'm left with x plus 10 squared equals 6. Okay, and now I'm going to get rid of that square root, or it's the square by taking the square root, of both sides. So I have x plus 10 equals positive and negative radical 6. Okay, and then the last thing I have to do is subtract 10. Okay, you cannot subtract 10 and radical 6, so you just have x equals negative 10 plus or minus radical 6. Okay, on your homework, it is going to ask you to give the decimal approximation of both answers. You have to type it in twice. There is no plus or minus sign on your calculator. So you would do negative 10 plus radical 6 and negative 10 minus radical 6. Okay, moving on, number 5. Excuse me. Is x minus 9 squared equals 64. So the first thing I need to do is take the square root of both sides. So x minus 9 equals positive or negative 8. And then I want to add 9 to both sides. So x equals 9 plus or minus 8. Okay, these are both numbers that we can work with. So this actually becomes 2 math problems to get the answer. We have x equals 9 plus 8 and x equals 9 minus 8. Okay, so x equals 17 or x equals 1. Okay, and it's just not a positive negative situation anymore. So your homework for this lesson is 22.1, page 812 to 813, numbers 1 through 15 all. Okay guys, thanks for watching. Have a great afternoon.